Greetings. Welcome to the panel discussion for CommWeek 2020 for the Public Relations sequence. My name is Mindia Whittier. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Communication at UTA, and I would like to welcome our guest speakers today and introduce you to them, and then also introduce you to our moderator. So we're joined today by Desmond Johnson. He's a pharmaceutical sales representative for Amarin Pharma, where he currently services the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. During his time at UTA, he was part of the leadership team for PRSSA. He interned for Mothers Against Drunk Driving and worked as a certified pharmacy technician. In his position with Amarin Pharma, he uses his background in public relations to market and educate providers on pharmaceutical drugs and their clinical outcomes. We're also joined by Kat Buxton. Kat is a strategic marketing manager specializing in financial and professional services communications. In her current role, Kat is responsible for developing integrated and multi-channel campaigns to advisor services clients for Charles Schwab. Prior to joining Schwab, Kat managed public relations campaigns for entities including Southwest Airlines, Celestial Seasonings, Farmers Insurance, United Health Group, and more. Mireya Martinez has worked for several different entities in the sports and entertainment industry, including ESPN, college athletics, and professional sports. She is currently handling client services and marketing for an agency that represents over 200 MLB and NFL athletes. And Yolisma Garcia is a first-generation alumna of UTA. During her time at the university, she strongly advocated for immigrant students using her skill sets in communication. She catalyzed an ongoing conversation about UTA becoming a sanctuary campus and pushed for spaces that support UTA's immigrant community. This work helped lead to UTA opening a dream center to serve undocumented students on campus. Mireya now works at Conill Advertising as a community manager and has worked on a broad range of projects and clients, including the North Texas Dream Team and Toyota. And our moderator today is Rocio Hernandez, who is the president of our PRSSA chapter. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. As you know, it's always important to hear from public relations or from professionals as a student looking to get into the profession. I think right now it's more important than ever. Some of us are still trying to get into the field, and we'll be graduating, some of us here in December amid a pandemic, as you all know. So we greatly appreciate the time that you all are committing and dedicating today. So I'll start with a few questions that I have for you guys already. So just from, you all have listened your own bios. You all have some pretty interesting, backgrounds, and from what I see, pretty interesting experiences while a student here at UTA. So my question to you all is, what can students right now do to prepare and for a career in public relations and get to a career that would maybe end up doing some of the work that you guys are doing right now? We can start with Mireya, if you want to go ahead.
I would say, honestly, start where you are now. I put myself through school, so I couldn't take like an unpaid internship. So I was literally waitressing at this tiny restaurant, Prince Lebanese, over by UTA. And I would just start talking to people. I know that, when you think of like networking for your future career in public relations, you don't think like maybe a tiny Lebanese diner as a waitress is where you need to get started. But I mean, that's all I had, and that opened huge doors for me. So I would say just network literally anywhere you are. You never know what can come from it.
I would echo that same comment. I think networking is so important. Look at your network, look to your teachers, look at the different organizations. Maybe you can't take an unpaid internship. Sometimes there are paid ones available, but if that's not an option, join a club. It doesn't necessarily have to just be within the organization you're interested in. Look beyond your college and look at the business school and other opportunities. If it's something you're interested in, there's, everybody could use a little bit of PR and marketing help. And then also, once you kind of tap into that network, set up informational interviews. Now's a great time, especially beyond just your local area, to reach out to people across the country and set up time to meet with them and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would echo what you both have said as well. Network. Myself, I actually did work full-time while I was in school, and I did an unpaid internship when I was at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I actually got that, I would say, pretty much from networking. A teacher, Professor Little, I believe she's still working at UTA. I actually met, at the time, she was the senior vice president at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She was one of our speakers. I had a good experience with her, just talking with her. And whenever they needed an intern, I actually spoke with her and she gave me that position. So I would say networking, and you do have to be flexible. And I would say use all your resources. I mean, if you go to church, you can network with people there. You can network with neighbors. And one thing about this position, in this profession, you can't be afraid to reach out for people for help. You know, you got to speak up and ask for help.
Yeah, I think those are some really good points. I also wanted to touch upon, in terms of what you can do now, right? Some of us might find ourselves with some little extra time, or rather trying to do something. Monetizing on the skill sets you already have are also really awesome. I think I want to give a nod to some of the social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram, where people are putting their best foot forward in terms of content creation. While we might think it's like a pastime, it's actually content creation, and that's something that you can really bank on. And building that portfolio and building that network in tangent with it kind of gives you a bundle that I would say kind of puts you towards that path of success in terms of finding jobs, because it's like you've done the work, people are willing to pay, especially right now in the pandemic. If you know how to upload a video to Instagram, you can get paid for that. So I think it's like taking that time to really polish some of those skills, learning new things, whether it's within the classroom or expanding it. Both are really awesome ways to put a student towards that path.
Yeah. Right. So that was a good point, bringing up that social media. I mean, there's plenty of people on social media starting small businesses and they need PR and marketing. You could reach out to them and say, hey, can I just write some press releases or do your website or marketing for you just to get that experience? So.
And I'll add one more thing. Make sure you're following the companies you admire that you might want to work for too. I actually was fortunate to get a job where I found an interview opportunity on Twitter, applied for it, and got a job.
Yeah.
You all mentioned networking and in your responses. How important has that been for you guys? Like early on, I guess, as a student, how did you develop, I guess, that skill for networking? How has it developed now, right? As you move along your career and stuff. Any tips that you guys would be able to provide for students in that area?
Well, I would say most students, they work in jobs through college where they're doing customer service already. So right there, you're networking. You're talking with people every day. I'm sure everybody has those bad days, but sometimes just push the conversation a little bit whenever you have customers come in, especially if they're trying to engage with you. So, I mean, that's a good way to increase your skills with networking there.
Absolutely. I second that. I know it sounds a little like intimidating when you're like network and meet all these people. It's not like that at all. It's more of the conversations you have in everyday life. And you never know what is going to happen from a conversation. I've had doors open that were, 10 years later, still like having effect. So, it sounds intimidating, but if you're a public relations major, you probably like to talk anyway. So just literally just have conversations and, put yourself out there. I think like I said, I worked for that tiny restaurant, and every regular that knew that I was a public relations major at UTA and I liked sports. And a lot of opportunities came from that, just from having normal conversations. They don't have to be business oriented, or you don't have to have an agenda in mind. Just a typical everyday conversation can go a long way.
I think I 100% agree. And I think it's so important to remember, you know, we're all just people, just finding those commonalities so you can open up the doors and build a relationship. So later on, when those opportunities come about, you know about this other person and they know about you and your interests.
Yeah, absolutely agree that it, to Mireya's point, when it's an organic conversation, you don't have to feel like you have to memorize an elevator speech every second you have with a person. I think it's very organic. If you share that you have a passion for something, it'll just come naturally, and then you'll start to slowly build relations through there. And, you know, like Kat mentioned, when everybody has a commonality that brings them together. I went to high school with like the provost for Hispanic outreach at UTA, and I made a cold call, and that led to a myriad of different things. So it's, I always think of the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because if Kevin Bacon knows 7 people in like different areas, I'm sure you do too. And we all have different ways that we can connect with each other, whether it's through organizations or through your professors. I think for me, what helped me in networking was always having somebody that knew 10 other people or 3 other people. So that way you can just start kind of, it forms a web, and sooner rather than later, you'll find yourself with like-minded people, especially if you're a part of an organization like PRSSA or, any younger AAF chapters or things like that.
Yeah. One more thing to add to that, and something that surprised me as I was kind of going through the first stages of my career, was you'd be surprised at how willing people are to help. You know, it sounds kind of scary, and you think like, oh, little me, like I'm 1 in a million and they're not going to want to help me if I reach out. I don't think I've had a single person turn me down. People are a lot more willing to help than I gave them credit for. Especially, I feel like UTA alumni in the communication school, it's a pretty tight bond. So I myself am always willing to help. So just reach out to somebody. I'm sure you'll get a response.
Yes, likewise. Don't let fear be the reason you don't take an action towards networking. That's half the battle, is just sending that email or DMing someone or picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Mireya, I was going to go back and touch on something you mentioned. So you worked at, you said Prince Lebanese while you were in college. I think that's one thing that maybe students can relate to a little bit. Having to put themselves through college, or having to, work that job during college. Students trying to find like PR experience, or, not able to take on an internship while they have, having to work and stuff. How was that for you, while you were a student here?
Yeah, it was hard. I think all through school, I worked 3 jobs. And then I went to school full time. And like Mireya, I'm first gen, like daughter of immigrants. And so it's not like I really had much of a network to fall back on. Like if I had questions and I had to research it myself, I couldn't really go ask my parents. But yeah, it was wild. But at one, very few people had the time management skills that I had coming out of college, and the multitasking. I learned so much from just having like real world experience in that. And 2, I thought that I was just working those jobs to get myself through college, but all of those like mundane jobs actually helped me the most. So yeah, it's you don't have to, like, I know a lot of people get scared, and especially when you go to Comm Day and you hear like, oh, well, this person is interning for AT&T and this person has this internship, and like I'm falling behind. Don't think that. It was like I said, the most mundane little things that really affected my career.
How did I guess y'all's time after graduating, how did that look like? Did you guys already have stuff lined up? Did you guys have to go through a huge months of, I guess, job hunting and stuff? How did that look like?
Well, I feel like I could speak for a lot of alumni. It's actually very difficult when you first get out of school. You may have those times where you're like, oh gosh, I don't know if this is for me because, you know, a lot of the jobs out there, they say they want you to have a year of experience and, you know, nobody wants to give you opportunity. You're like, how can I get experience?
Yeah, you guys won't give me experience.
Yeah, so that's why you have to use your resources. Kind of like what I did, I ended up in pharmaceutical sales. I was a pharmacy technician for several years and through college. So, you know, at a period whenever I wasn't able to get a PR job, I was like, well, how can I leverage, you know, my experience in the pharmacy industry? So then I started looking into like more healthcare PR or looking at healthcare positions, and I landed in an account manager role. You know, PR is one of those things that's very broad. So you can use PR in almost any profession.
Mm-hmm. It's very transferable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for me, I was in a really fortunate experience that my internship like extended into employment. I will, however, say that was the first time that I was introduced to what is called negotiating your salary. That a lot of folks kind of don't think too much, right? Because you're so eager to get the job that you're kind of like, oh, I guess this is okay. But when I got offered the position as a full-time, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. And so I had to do some work, like in research on Indeed, research on like different sites what the median average pay for that position would hold. And this was like an account executive position. So it was like they were shorthanding me quite a bit of money. And so I was really fortunate to like lean on the support of some of my coworkers and superiors to ask like, hey, this is what I want, and this is what I know I'm worth. So let's negotiate something. I think that for a lot of alumni who get an offer and it's kind of, you want to jump at that opportunity, but you have to be really keen on reading on some of these things. Granted, you may have just graduated, but don't fall to think that you did a lot of work. Like you did a lot of work within, maybe you were a part of an organization or you worked somewhere and you were very vocal about things, or you took up a lot of projects. That all counts as experience and things you can fight for when you're negotiating your salary. So that, like, I wish someone would have told me that. I kind of like found myself in that situation, but thankfully I was able to negotiate and get my just pay. So I think that would, for me, like, I want to share that little tidbit with everyone.
That's so important. Know your value. And they used to do it when I was earlier in my career, but PRSSA would do an annual compensation survey. And if anything, you could look back at the historical ones and they survey different employers and see what they're paying people. That can help you with a starting point to know what you should expect to earn if you know how to negotiate for that.
Yeah, it's really awkward and uncomfortable. And honestly, I wish we had touched more on it in school. So professors who are listening, if you guys want to just take like 20 minutes to go over this, I'll volunteer to come speak on it. It is very important because you walk this fine line where you're like, I don't want to seem ungrateful, like they're giving me this job and I'm happy to be here, but also they're going to try to shorthand you. So yeah, I've had much experience with that, and I wish I would have known more before going into it.
Yeah. Well, and just remember, they have offered you the job, so clearly there's something in you they like
exactly.
So don't forget that.
Yeah, you have a lot of leverage, and if you ask, the worst they can say is no. And my very first job after I graduated, I very, very uncomfortably, I had to do it over email, and I was so nervous to negotiate my salary, and I got more than what he originally asked or was offering me. But then when I quit and I left, he told me, he was like, I knew right away that I wanted to hire you after that. Like I had made a good choice because you weren't just going to take the easy road. You knew your worth. It was good. So they actually respect you for it.
Like Mireya said, you got to do your research. So kind of, I would say also the company, know a little bit about the company before you're interviewing, before you even get to where they give you an offer. And one thing that I do, if I talk to a recruiter first, I'll ask the recruiter, what is the range that they're looking to pay for this position? So that's sometimes you'll have an idea of what you should expect. And that way, if they try to lowball you after that, you'll know you have room to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And in my own experience, I will also say, you know, sometimes they can't come back with more. Sometimes I've had the responses where they say, you know, we feel like we've given you a fair offer, but we can give you a signing bonus, or we can give you additional PTO. So there's, you know, it just depends on what you're looking for. And if you're still excited about the opportunity, find something else that maybe you can negotiate.
Right. And I guess along those lines of knowing your worth and doing your research for where you're going to work at, some of us are in the middle, you know, students are in the middle of doing like internship applications, or if you're, you know, senior right now, then you're doing applications for a full-time job. So any tips for that? I guess any suggestions that you may have for students right now doing that kind of process, as far as finding a spot that's a good fit for you, a company that's a good fit for you, an agency that's a good fit for you. Maria, if you want to start off, or if you have anything.
Well, I saw Desmond wanted to go, so I'll put the mic.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But I would say doing that research. One thing I do whenever I am looking into an employer, I look at their core values. I read a little bit about them. I read reviews. I read reviews about everything before I do it. So knowing the core values, and that'll let you know right there. The first company I worked with after I graduated, one of their core values was fun. So that let me know that I was a company that, you know, it's important for them that you have a good work-life balance. And even at work, they want it to be fun. You know, they want you to work hard, but they don't want you to dread coming to work every day. So researching the companies that you want to work for and knowing a little about them.
Yeah, I want to yell about reading reviews, because I was pulled in with this facade of like, we're fun, we're a millennial workplace, we drink beer on Fridays, it's great. And then I read the reviews. Like, I mean, once I was in the actual job itself, right? I was like, man, I'm getting overworked. I'm putting in way more hours than I really should. My team keeps getting smaller. Like, what's going on? Well, then it struck me, somebody was like, you know, read the reviews. Like, they have never gotten good reviews. And I started going through it, and I was like, wow, what did I get myself into? But I mean, the thing is, that's why research is so important, right? Because it's like, if they're already lowballed you, and then you look at the reviews and stuff like that, there are countless more opportunities. There are so many agencies in the North Texas area. I know, like, sometimes we get to like hung on maybe one offer that we got, but if you come back and you don't really feel like you would want to work there, don't stop. There are countless other like agencies you can reach out to or look into. I know for me, that was like, I felt like that was the one, right? But then later on, I realized that the agency world is so small, you could literally just go to another one, or maybe somebody will suggest you a much better one or something like that. So I would suggest like that research fit is really important.
Yeah, same. I would almost say that, like, maybe not when I was first starting out, but now that I'm more experienced, I prefer working for a good company than to have like the exact role I want. Because if you work for a good company, then that means that they will promote you and you'll grow there and you'll eventually get to that role. But work culture is so important, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And, you know, I feel like what's important to say for graduates who are getting ready to start their job search or continue their job search in a tough economy is, you may not get the role you want right out of college, and that's okay. You know, find a role with a company. It doesn't necessarily, to Mireya's point, have to be in the particular field you're interested in, but if it's a good company, work your way to those positions. Network internally, network with other people externally. It's if you have to take a job that's not the job, that's okay. I know I had a few jobs early on in my career that I didn't love, but I gave it my all because I knew these people could connect me to other people. And it's important for them to see that you're a hard worker, so you have those references too later on.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, you know, be a hard worker, like you were saying. Whenever you start these jobs, your managers, people are looking at you. So, I mean, if you're working hard, they'll know right off the bat, when you start, okay, he may be a future manager one day, or she might be, a future executive for us. They know, if you're a good worker or not. They're watching.
Yeah, for sure.
For those students, as you know, we have, PR majors that will start as freshmen, and some that are now more senior have taken more of those like senior level classes. What should those students look for the freshmen looking for internship opportunities? What should they look for in an internship? And for those students looking for their first job, straight out of college, what should they look for in, their first position?
You mean as far as like trying to get the position, or?
As far as experience, or you guys touched on like culture and stuff and like researching the company, but like what goes into that research?
Like I said, researching core values of a company. Sometimes on LinkedIn, you can see UTA alumni works there. That could be a good opportunity for you to reach out to them and pick their brain a little bit. What's your experience been like? And sometimes that could help land you a role too. If you let them know that you're looking, sometimes they know the recruiters or the manager or something. So that goes into some of the research.
I would say definitely see like what they're going to have you do. There is a lot of value in the small stuff. I will say that. So probably the biggest piece of advice I could give in general and on any topic is do the work. Like do the dirty work. You'll learn so much from it. And, going back to the point that we discussed earlier, like my first job out of college was not my dream job by any means, but I learned so much from it. It was in construction, public relations, and I wanted to work in sports so bad. And here I was writing press releases for like tankless water heaters. Just, I was like, why am I here? But I learned so much from it. Like now I look back and I'm like, wow, I got my butt kicked, and I wish that I had been more humble about it. I wish I would have been like more embracing of, man, this is not what I want to do, but like, what can I learn, instead of just being childish. And, I didn't want to do that. I thought I needed to be doing something else. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I was going to touch on, Mireya, you mentioned like internships are really awesome for figuring out what you want to do career-wise. Because it's like you're getting kind of like your feet wet. My first internship was in like corporate communications with Univision. And then I realized I don't want to be in the newsroom. It's like there was too much happening. But it was an internship, right? Like you were paid, it was for 6 to 8 weeks, and then you were good. So it's like a trial run, right? And it helps a lot also with building your portfolio in terms of what skill sets you have accumulated within that time frame. So I think for me, it's like, do that research on like what your roles and responsibilities will entail. The time frame of it is also really important. I think about like students who commute, who also have a job. Think about the time commitment you can put into it. If they're looking for somebody to put in 25 hours, realistically have a conversation with yourself if that's something that you can undertake. Because if not, you're going to stress yourself out even more and put yourself really thin to where you're probably not doing as well in school because you're maybe doing a lot too much at the internship. And at the end of the day, you're trying to get that degree because without that degree, you probably can't get that job to begin with. So not to deter from any contractual folks out there, but I do want to make that point because I think I definitely overwhelmed myself as a commuter and trying to do work. It was just not it. So maybe a summer internship works best for you rather than a fall internship. And yeah.
I'd also add, don't limit yourself just to the companies that are specifically looking for interns. If you only have 10 hours, maybe a month or a week to give, because you are working full time to make money and going to school. Volunteer for a nonprofit, see if you can do some pro bono work for them. You know, I feel like a lot of those organizations will take any support they can get, and that becomes another way to expand your network as well. I'll also add, do you ask questions when you're interviewing for the role? Make sure that you're not just going to be getting coffee. I know that was something a lot of my intern interviewers were sensitive to make sure that they knew that wasn't the case, but I did have those interviews where it was basically like they were just looking for a cheap admin. So be mindful and don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah.
Well, can I add something to that? I was going to say, don't burn any bridges, because you never know when, whoever you're interning for, you may hate it. Still don't burn that bridge. Always be respectful, because you never know when they may be the manager at a position that you really want later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, I have to add to that point, I have the craziest story. So when I was at UTA, the Rangers were in the World Series, and man, I wanted to work for the Texas Rangers so badly, and I took whatever job they could give me, and it was in the parking lot. So I was, smiling just at the parking lot, kind of like just happy to be there. And one of the other girls that worked in the parking lot with me, she was amazing. And she ended up going to work for the Texas Rangers and just doing a variety of things for them. Fast forward 10 years later, I got laid off because of COVID back in June. She saw that I was needing a job, and she had somebody reach out to her and say, like, hey, we need somebody for our marketing team. And she was like, this girl right here, she's amazing. And they said, as soon as she referenced me, like, they called me and they were like, we don't need to call anyone else. So I was nice to a girl that I worked in the parking lot with, even though that wasn't my dream. I was just happy to be there, and we were struggling together. And 10 years later, that's what got me the job that I have now. So Definitely do not burn any bridges.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. As far as like planning y'all's career paths and where you are now, did you guys always have an idea of where you wanted to end up in, or how did you get to the positions that you are right now? You want to start? Yeah, Desmond, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I always start. Well, I would say for me, I always knew I somewhat wanted to work in healthcare, because healthcare, I feel like that's something that's going to always be around. And I work for a pharmaceutical company, and as we know, COVID is big right now. And so the pharmaceutical companies, they're all trying to get vaccines and things. It's like, it just supports my point. Healthcare is always going to be here. So I knew I wanted to work in healthcare. I didn't really know what path I was going to go down. And like I said, I was able to use my pharmaceutical experience to land the role where I'm at now, doing pharmaceutical sales. So.
Wow. Yeah. I was going to say, anyone else have anything else to add to that?
I will say, rest assured, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted a job in PR. So my first job, I worked at for a year. It was interesting work. I learned a lot. It just wasn't where I wanted to be long term. So when I took my second job, I tried to be a little more mindful of what kind of experience I was looking for, still not knowing. I had the fortunate opportunity to work for an agency, and that was a great learning experience. It was a lot of hard work. I realized I didn't really care so much for the agency environment. That's just me personally. But I got the opportunity to work with so many different clients that it really helped me figure out what direction I wanted to go in. I could really say, this, maybe consumer PR is not for you. You can focus on the B2B side. And that was where I started going from there. And even then, even working in PR, I started to realize maybe there's other things within communications that I might enjoy more. So don't feel like you have to know exactly what industry or even what type of work you want to do. Just be hungry for the opportunities and keep your eyes open. Even having, to Myra's point, having your coworker at your Starbucks or your restaurant job or what have you could open up opportunities later on. Make sure you foster, again, networking, foster those connections, get to know people, and just pay attention to yourself. What makes you, what drives you, what makes you interested, where do you get excited, and then try to avoid the things that you're not as excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I always knew I wanted to work in sports. However, I didn't know what aspect. You didn't do a lot of things in sports with a PR degree, but for me, like my last semester in college, I interned for ESPN events, and I thought I wanted to do PR. I wanted to be in the like press booth. I wanted to do media. That's all I wanted to do. I did not care for game day operations. I did not care for special events. That was not me. And then I ate crow a few years later when I had one job as an event director and one as an operations manager that I loved. So again, humility is key here. Just like now I go into situations knowing that all I know is that I know nothing. Like you would be surprised at how like pleasantly surprised you can be by things that you thought you had no interest in. So definitely try a lot of things. Just, you know, that's where internships come in, and you can see what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to really quickly go back to what Kat mentioned about volunteering. I had been volunteering with an organization, it's a nonprofit called the North Texas Dream Team. And I used a lot of my communication skill sets in terms of doing on-air like press interviews, doing the PR for them. I was running a lot of different things. And that's where I really got a lot of that nitty-gritty PR experience. And like to where I am now career-wise, I don't think that those like overlapped. Because it was like heavy, you know, social justice communication work versus corporate communications for like a big name brand client. So obviously for me, I still have like, do I know what I'm doing with my life moments.
Oh my gosh.
But what I always come back to is like, I'm still building myself as an individual and can like, if ever I want to do contracting work, I can, right? Because I have so many skill sets in so many different fields that currently I have clients separately because of content creation, because of my PR experience, right? Like you could be hungry for like one discipline, or you could be like me and be multi-hyphenated, so many different fields, right? At some point I wanted to go into government affairs with communication, didn't like that. And then you can just bounce around and still not know a definitive line of what you want to do, which is where I find myself most of the time. But I do know that I want to use my communication for good. I want to continue to elevate my skill set and be better than I was yesterday. So I think always do that. And if you find yourself in a situation where like maybe you want to do something different, I mean, go for it. You have so much support. You have the UTA community that you can lean on and the huge alumni network that you have. So definitely tap into whatever you feel passionate about.
Yeah, I know that a lot of you all graduated from UTA with that PR degree. And then some of you guys have now titles in marketing. I see, Mireya, you were doing like social media stuff for DS, and Desmond, right, pharmaceutical sales. So what were some of the transferable skills that you guys were able to, or have learned, I guess, in your career that you could maybe see opening doors for other career paths along the line? And Desmond, I think that you could go ahead and start with you.
Okay, well, in the role that I'm currently doing, pharmaceutical sales, that encompasses a lot of presentations because I'm speaking with providers, their staffs, and like I said in my bio, you know, I'm educating them on the drugs that I have and our clinical outcomes. I had never done presentations until my time at UTA. So UTA is what gave me those skills. So, I mean, those transferable skills right there, you know, in PR, you have to be a pretty good speaker. You have to be a pretty good writer. I'm speaking every day, all day. I'm networking. That's what sales is. You have to network because you want their business. So those are some of the transferable skills right there that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I agree. I always think back to what Professor Whittier said one time. She's like, the mistakes you're making now are free. Because once you get into your work and you can't afford to make a mistake, you'll realize just how important it is to like really take that criticism with an open mind, because that's what you're kind of in school for. Because once it's like you're presenting to a client and you mistyped something and that was for like a, you know, big contract or something, that could count, like that could count against you. So definitely, if you make mistakes, if you trip and fall, I wasn't an A+ student, but I definitely came out a very well-rounded, like individual for the workforce. So those were transferable skills in terms of really polishing my work to where it is now. I don't know that they still have the emerging media certification at UTA, but I took that, and that like we got Facebook certified, we got Hootsuite certified. So I already had a lot of that knowledge for social getting out of the classroom. But for anybody who works in social media, it changes like every 6 months or so. So you're having to relearn, retake some of those certifications. Don't take for granted all the fun stuff you do on Instagram, because sometimes that pays. And if you're just in an organization, you know, putting up an IG story or something, you can put that wordly, like, how would I say it? Like word it to a point where it looks really good on your resume, right? Like concept and executed, storytelling for X, Y, and Z. So it's just like sometimes what you think is a very minuscule piece can actually play a big part in your skill sets.
Right. I wanted to touch on that also. I think there's like a misconception that social media is easy, or like a job, someone's like that goes into the profession of like working social media for a company, or, you know, that kind of stuff, that it's easy. Mireya, I'm interested if you want to touch on a little bit of like the work that you do, and maybe talk about like the role of social media in like the PR industry and the communications industry.
Yeah, for sure. So have y'all ever tried to explain to your parents what you do? Like, they're like, Miha, you play on Facebook? I'm like, no, it's not play. It's so hard. Yeah. So the scheduling and like the content creating, and I will say back to my first job out of college, I was having to make entire like content calendars months at a time for a spray foam insulation company. So you guys can only guess how exciting that was. So after that, everything just seemed like a piece of cake, you know? But yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Be very detail oriented. You have to, you know, the typos. When I was in Whittier's class, you couldn't have more than 3 grammar mistakes.
Oh, that's still a thing.
Yeah, is that still a thing? Yeah, no. God bless her for that. Honestly, yeah, the detail orientation that comes, that you just have to be really good about that. And then scheduled tweets seem like a godsend, but then sometimes they can go like awful as well. So it really does require a lot of strategy. And for those people that want to go into PR strategy, that might be something, you know, an avenue that would probably be best right now. There's a lot of companies that need help with social media because people think it's easy and then realize that it's really not. So
yeah.
It's a very time consuming too.
Yes.
Yeah, especially for paid campaigns, that's when you have to really put a keen eye. I think one time we almost put like an extra 0. It's like, wait, the client only approved this much amount of money for it. But yeah, to your point, it's very detail oriented. It changes. There's new things all the time. All of a sudden, now you're having to learn how to do things. I mentioned TikTok earlier, but I mentioned it a lot because there are brands who are doing really awesome at it, and you have to really know the landscape of the social channel to really like produce something successful. Because if you try to put like something on TikTok and your client is upset as to why it didn't do well, maybe you didn't produce the type of content that is doing well on that platform per se. So it's about like learning, doing research, reading. You know, I myself, I'm always on social media just to keep up, because trends are different from last week to what's trending now. And so we're always like up to speed onto what's happening so that the client can maximize on it and put some really good stuff out there.
Yeah. And also, I've never felt as old as I did whenever I had to figure out how TikTok worked. I was like, oh my God, it's happening. But it is a really good platform for stuff like that. You just have to know how it works, and it's not easy. I mean, from a business perspective, it's completely different when you're just, goofing around making videos as to when you're trying to get your client some exposure, So it's very strategic. It's not as easy as people think it is.
Yeah.
And I'll add, you don't need to have a company to work for to practice using this stuff. Practice building your personal brand. I'll also note that anytime I'm on any sort of hiring committee, I always look at someone's LinkedIn and always look at what public channels they have available, not just to see what they're posting about for anything scandalous, but just to understand, what's their personality like? Are those commonalities? What are they interested in? What do they tweet about in their spare time? Who do they know? I think it's also a good way for you to get familiar with the channels. So even if you only have a basic understanding, you can come in and say, hey, yes, I have posted videos on TikTok. I have uploaded stories on Instagram. I know how to tag people, which can be very valuable, just having a basic understanding.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as the industry, things are changing right now as far as how people communicate things. Now we have more of a like an emphasis on like digital rather than I guess you guys,
Traditional.
right? And you guys maybe especially now like amid COVID, I think there's stuff that we've learned. We can't have as a PR professional, it's hard to host like press conferences right now and like encourage people to come to your press conference and stuff. So that understanding and knowledge of like how to work digital or your digital resources is important. I wanted to ask you guys, how have you guys continued to find like learning opportunities? You guys all have your positions already, but like learning and like reading up on new stuff and within the industry and stuff like that.
You have to be flexible. I mean, I one of the things I live by is trying to learn something new every day. So you have to be flexible. You have to do your research. If your employer asks you to do something, as long as it's not too far out from your job description, do it. If you don't know exactly how to do it, research a little bit, reach out to people, figure out how to do it, because you're only going to make yourself that much more marketable. So being flexible.
Yeah. Also, there's, and I did this during the pandemic when we were in like a complete shutdown. There's a lot of websites that are offering just free courses.
Right.
I think I got certified in like digital media, and I took some sports sponsorship classes. I will say one really, probably the most important thing I've done is take tutorials on Canva. And so for those who don't know what Canva is, it's like poor man's Photoshop is what people call it, but I like it better than Photoshop because it's so much more user friendly. There's a free version online and you can make really great graphics. And anybody that comes to me for help on their resume, I direct them to Canva. Like, don't do it on Word. If you really want to set yourself out, go to Canva, research resume templates, and just make yours stick out. It's super easy. But there's so many cool things. I mean, I work for an agency that does PR and social media for 200 athletes, and we use Canva. So if you can learn something like that, and there's just so many cool things you can do with it, I definitely recommend that.
Yeah. I'm going to hate myself for not asking this later, but I was told to ask you, Mireya, how many presidents of the United States have you met? And I want to know like what that means. How did you, I guess?
So a lot of my experience in sports has been in golf, and the golf world isn't exactly what I wanted to land in at first, but everybody plays golf, like all retired athletes play golf. There's all sorts of important people that play golf. So I was the event director at Trinity Forest Golf Club, which is the golf club where the Byron Nelson was held up until this past year. And I actually started there from day one, the day that, I think we worked in like a shipping container, and the course was a landfill. And I worked all the way until we hosted a PGA tournament. And it was a very high profile course. And with that, we had quite a few high profile people. So I had the honor of meeting President George W. Bush quite a few times. We hosted him. He was like an honorary member there because the Wounded Warrior Open that he hosts every year, we held. And there are plenty of funny stories. He is a very animated man. His father as well, HW, before he passed, I got to meet him. And President Obama. One day, I told my boss, I was like, hey, do you mind if I take tomorrow off? Like, I've worked like 60 hours this week and I'm tired and I don't think there's much going on. And he was like, no, I don't think you want to take tomorrow off. And I was like, what's going on? And he was like, well, I actually need you to meet with Secret Service today because we have somebody coming in tomorrow. And I was like, who? President Bush? Like, he comes here all the time. He's like, no. And I looked at our sheet and it just said 44. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll come. So yeah, that was cool. It's probably going to be one of the highlights of my entire career was hosting. It was him, Tony Romo, Emmett Smith, and then Ron Kirk, who was the first Black mayor of Dallas. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds so interesting. I think that's definitely sounds very appealing to students, and I think your background in like entertainment industry will definitely like appeal to students.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, don't be scared to DM or email. Or I actually just helped a current student with his resume today. So yeah, hit me up on any channel. I'll be happy to help.
Likewise.
I'm on social media as well. So
Same.
Well, I'll try and wrap this up with our last question. So you guys know we're in a time of uncertainty right now at the moment. Many of our students will graduate here in December amid COVID, and even in the spring, it'll still be something that we'll have to be dealing with. Some of them will have jobs lined up or, an internship lined up, and some will not. Because of the circumstances, any last minute or last words of wisdom, encouragement for those students looking to, start their careers amid COVID-19?
Yeah, like we said earlier, don't be afraid to take the job, even if it's not exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. Get in there, get some experience, network, build those relationships. And like I said, be flexible. That's what really is going to help elevate you to the next point and where you want to go in life. You can do it. I know it may be hard, but I think we can all agree that it wasn't easy getting out of college, but look at us now.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to add that we haven't already talked about before is enthusiasm goes a long way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you have to really almost convince yourself that you're happy to be there when you're not. But honestly, it really does. Enthusiasm just goes a long way. And like hard work ethic, people notice it and it opens doors for you before you even have the chance to push the door in. Like, yeah, that's all I would have to say is if you just, and take everything with, if you don't have a good day at work and you aren't technically, enjoying your job, those are almost the times where you learn the most. So, there's a positive side to everything. And I wish I would have known that more when I was younger. But yeah, even if it's not your dream position, kill it anyway, because somebody's watching.
Yep. Yeah, I think resiliency, being able to bounce back quickly, the fail fast, that resonates in any industry. I loved what Desmond said there. Just having confidence in yourself. You've made it this far. You've accomplished a great deal by getting to graduation. Don't take that for granted. and network. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Network.
So I guess speaking of network, I want to give you all the opportunity to kind of plug in like where students can find you guys. And I hope we can maybe say LinkedIn that we can find you all there. But if you want to go ahead and plug in, you know, your social media or whatever.
Yeah.
They can network. Yeah.
I was really quickly, I know as far as like tying it in with like things I wish I would have known or last minute thing is for our first generation students, it's hard to fight that imposter syndrome sometimes, especially if you're the first family to work in a corporate space. Don't let that deter you from blazing trails for other people. I know for myself, like a first generation immigrant, like I'm navigating so many different things. And there's so much to learn. And by making your small doesn't help your case either. I think what helps is writing down, you know, personal affirmations. You know, you are hired there. People saw something in you. You carry a talent that nobody else has in that room. And those are just some things that you can continue to remind yourself even through college. And yeah, just continue to keep kicking butt. And in terms of like, if maybe you don't get that dream job, there's always contractual work. People are always hiring contractors. You have a special skill set that somebody needs. Like you probably can produce a super cool live stream that nobody else can. Companies are looking at that. If your social media is your personal portfolio, keep putting your work out there. Somebody is bound to be looking for that. And then lastly, folks can find me on Instagram. It's just at Mireya Yolis. And then LinkedIn with Mireya Yolisma, that's spelled with a Y. There's very few of us. So Mireya Garcia, there are plenty, but Mireya Yolisma is pretty unique.
Yeah, I could, to your point, I could give an entire like sermon on imposter syndrome. Again, if any of the professors want to have me in their class, I'd be happy to. But it is something that I think it is important to discuss. All of my social channels are Reya Martinez, REYA MARTINEZ, and my LinkedIn is just Mireya Martinez. So you guys are welcome to find me there.
Yeah, I'm on social media. I have Instagram. I have a Twitter, but I never get on it. I'm on Instagram pretty active and LinkedIn. It's just my name on Instagram, Desmond Johnson _. On LinkedIn, it's just Desmond Johnson. I'm sure you'll see me connected with some of the professors or somebody from UTA.
Yeah.
Likewise. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm connected to Professor Whittier. You can also look up the UTA Alumni Network, Kat Buxton Bryant. And just echoing what Mireya said, you know, make it so you make it and pay it forward. When Comm Day rolls around in a couple of years, make sure you're giving back to the people in your position now.
Right. Well, thank you so much to all of you guys for joining today and obviously taking the time to talk to students that are, you know, maybe feeling that imposter syndrome right now, you know, during application season. So thank you all so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great.